Welcome to Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast. I'm your host, Chamber CEO Rachel Beld, and it's my privilege to interview the movers, shakers, and change makers impacting our amazing Vista community and beyond. Today, I'm joined by RaeAnn Stout of Stout Bookkeeping. RaeAnn helps business owners take the stress out of bookkeeping so they can focus on growing their business. With experience running 3 businesses of her own, she brings clarity, honesty, and a partnership mindset to every client, helping them turn financial chaos into confidence. Originally from Minnesota, RaeAnn now lives in Vista with her husband and 3 kids. Let's welcome RaeAnn. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time. And so, before we dig into bookkeeping and your expertise, I want to learn a little bit about you and how you landed in this career. So when you were growing up, were you a math wizard? Did you love numbers? Were you constantly looking at the clock and making it into an equation in your head? Like how did you know that you wanted to explore accounting and bookkeeping?
I didn't know from the beginning. I remember being in high school and taking an accounting class in high school, and it kind of came naturally. I kind of enjoyed it, but I didn't pursue accounting. I went actually and studied graphic design. And while I liked it, I think I kind of knew pretty quickly that I wasn't really going to have a career in graphic design. It was a really competitive industry. And so I graduated from college and I started working for a couple of bigger companies helping with operations, so in retail. And I really enjoyed that. I really find myself to love problem solving and puzzles. And so I did a lot of retail management, and then I moved into IT management. And when I had that job, I ended up kind of doing a lot of things in this business. I did the purchasing, I did the IT management, I did do a little bit of the accounting. And so I saw how every piece of the business worked together. And the financial aspect was really important to be managed closely. So then I took a break and I had my kids, and I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. I owned 2 other businesses where I always did my own bookkeeping. I really fell in love with bookkeeping during that time, managing all my own finances and running 2 businesses very successfully. But when we moved to California, I started working for a gelato company, and they were a few years behind in their taxes, and they really hadn't been doing very good bookkeeping for a while. So I took that over and tried to help this company turn around, and they weren't able to do that, even with really solid bookkeeping practices. And that's sort of where my passion really developed, to help business owners find that financial clarity and to use that financial clarity to make better business decisions.
Yeah, that's so important. I think a lot of times businesses, maybe, for example, in a gelato company, for example, you start a gelato company because you're really good at making gelato and you love it. You love the experience that it brings to people. You want to serve people. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are great at bookkeeping. Probably the opposite. Not, people only have, you can only have so many skills, right? And it's very rare that business owners are great at producing XYZ widget and also the bookkeeping. So that's really important. I also wanted to just comment really quickly about your comment about studying graphic design. And that is, when people think about graphic design, you think about that being an incredibly creative industry, a creative pursuit. And it's interesting to me that you landed in this accounting and bookkeeping space because you don't necessarily think of that on surface of being creative. However, like you mentioned, it's about problem solving, and problem solving really is about creativity. You certainly don't want to be too creative with your numbers, but the problem solving piece of that is creative. So I really think that's important for people to recognize that the skills that you cultivate and develop when you're younger, oftentimes they have a connection to the work that we end up doing later, even if that path isn't totally linear.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I really found a love in organizing things. And I always thought, well, I can solve a problem if I can take all this stuff apart and put it back together in a different way. So that's where I think that passion really came from.
Yeah, that's great. And so, with businesses, oftentimes, like I was saying, they're really good at the service they provide or the product that they make, but not necessarily in the finance piece. So tell me a little bit about why it's so important to have an expert help you with your money.
Yeah, it's really important. Like you said, not every business owner can be an expert in every job, but initially they are, right? Because they have to be, because they start a business and they're wearing all the hats.
Right.
And so they kind of have to dip their toes in a little bit of everything. But what we find happens is that they're missing deductions because they don't truly understand maybe the financial ramifications of what they're categorizing or how they set up their loan, or maybe they set up their loan to be income and now they accidentally paid taxes on that. And so it's really important to have a professional overseeing your bookkeeping, because they might be missing tax deductions. They might be paying taxes on things that weren't actually income. And when their reports aren't correct, they can't really make decisions based on accurate accounting. So it's really important to have, and I always recommend to my clients, have a bookkeeper and have a tax preparer, because it's really ideal to have two sets of eyes on your finances.
Yeah. So you are not a tax preparer, you're not a CPA.
Correct.
But you work with them. Mm-hmm. So what does that process look like when you're working with someone at year end, for example? Mm-hmm. What kinds of things do you need for someone to have for you to be able to help them prepare for year end?
So, year end isn't a whole lot different than month end process for us, because we try to keep everything up to date throughout the year. And so year end and month end look pretty similar for the most part, but, we have access to all the bank accounts, all their payroll provider, their payment processors. We have access to all those things. So we try to remove the business owner from the process as much as possible to give them that time back so that they can focus on running their business. So what it looks like is, we're in QuickBooks. We categorize everything. We use all the source documents, the statements to reconcile. And then at month end, we close the books. And then at year end, we go in and reconcile anything that hasn't been reconciled throughout the year. And then we wrap everything up into a nice little bow and hand off their tax preparer a great little tax package that has everything they need, which is great because a lot of tax preparers like to see the reports in Excel format. And so we put everything together in a nice little workbook with separate tabs for all the reports, everything that tax preparer needs to really get started. And then what's even better for the business owner is that they don't have to handle all those questions directly from the tax preparer. We leave all of our contact information in the workbook so the tax preparer can contact us directly and we can work through as much as possible directly with them.
That's great. That's great. So you mentioned in your example, you mentioned tax deductions, and a big one, I think probably that a lot of people have done, especially post-COVID with all of the loans that happened, is booking a loan as income. Right. So are there any other just really obvious things that you see a lot of people do that's a mistake?
When they record their credit card payments, they forget to book the interest, which is tax deductible.
Okay.
That's a big thing. Another thing we see is booking bank deposits as sales when you've sent out an invoice. And so if you're not matching those two together, you're double recording your income.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that could be really tricky.
Yes.
And then that, like you said, with the information, if you're a business, you need to budget for the future. Mm-hmm. You need to think about your expenses, think about your income. And if the information, if you're double booking income, or if you're booking a loan as income, or you're not reflecting that, then you have false information for future projections. Right. And that's a really tricky place to be, because then you really can never perform how you think you're going to perform if you're basing it on, mistaken past.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's really, really helpful. Are there specific industries that you prefer to work with?
I found myself specializing in the beauty industry.
Okay.
I worked for Sephora back in the day, and I just really found a passion for the beauty industry. So I love working with salons, spa owners. But really, I just love helping small service-based businesses, really anywhere.
That's great. Do you have a certain size? When you say small, is that based on number of employees? Is it based on revenue? What does small mean to you?
Small to me is probably like 10 to 15 employees or less.
Okay.
I did really initially find a passion with helping businesses who were at that like 1 to 2 year transition point where like they grew really fast and now all of a sudden they, need to elect as an S Corp and actually start paying themselves a salary, or they hire their first employee. Like things are getting really serious for them.
Yeah.
And that's usually the point where they decide like, I need to outsource my bookkeeping. And so I have like specialized in helping businesses at that kind of place make that big jump.
Okay.
And I find it really accelerates their growth.
Great. That's great. Well, and I know that you as a small business owner are expanding as well. You recently hired an employee.
I did.
That's so exciting. So you're really at a growth point for yourself too.
I am.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So now how long have you been operating as Stout Bookkeeping?
So it's been about 1 year and 4 months.
Okay. So a lot of growth really in a short amount of time.
Yes.
Because you've really found this sweet spot helping people. So I want to ask you a little bit, on the personal side. So you're a business owner, you're a mom of 3 kids, a wife, you're involved in the community. How do you do everything that you do?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I protect my calendar like fiercely because I'm a big advocate for time blocking.
Right.
And so I plan out my weeks. I try to plan them out ahead of time, 1 to 2 weeks in advance. And I try to stick to it as much as possible. And that's sort of what gives me that peace of mind that like I'm going to have time to do everything. And just setting realistic expectations with my clients and with my family, actually, But yeah, just using time blocking to manage it all is really helpful because, I can say, okay, I have this project due on this time. I know I need to sit down and devote, a good amount of time to that in, bigger chunks, right? So putting that into my calendar. But, my son is in baseball now. And so it's like a big commitment
to your life,
and so that's on the calendar and, the school pickups and everything's in the calendar. And, I just have to, as a small business owner, still wearing most of the hats, like I just have to pencil it in wherever I can. If it's an hour chunk, here and there, that's just what I have to do. So right now I'm currently waking up at 4 a.m. and I get in like my 2 hours before the kids wake up and take them to school. And then I get a couple more hours. But yeah, the time blocking and protecting my calendar is really important for that.
Wow. And that's interesting because probably a lot of the clients that you serve are in similar situations where they are a business owner. They also have a family. They're navigating real life, other conflicts. And so as a business owner, you get it. And so then you're able to help them on that, you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, I'm also as a busy mom and, my job is more than full time. And, it's challenging to do all of the things. And I think there's really an expectation of moms, particularly today, where you're expected to basically be a full-time mom and have a full-time job and do everything like you didn't have the other requirement. And it's a lot. And so like with my kids, they're a little bit older than yours. And I tell them, I can't come to every single thing, but if something's really important to you, I will be there. I will move mountains. I'll move it around. I'll make it work. But we have to decide what's important for me to be there. And then, I can't be at every soccer practice.
Right.
I can't be at every single thing. But when it's a game, I'll be there. When it's a performance, I'll be there. I can't be at everything. But when it matters and you tell me it matters, make it happen.
Absolutely.
And I think that for me is really the way that I can navigate stuff, because and especially I feel like compared to when I was a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, kids have so much going on. I'm like, I think I did one thing at a time, if that. Right.
Yeah.
And now kids have so many activities, which is wonderful that we have so many opportunities, but it's really challenging. And there's no transportation for school, and it's tricky.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Sorry, I just had to go on a little vent there.
No, it's okay. And it's even trickier for us. We're a 1-car household.
Oh, wow. That is tricky.
And so yeah, we really do kind of manage it very similarly. You know, my daughter ended up having like a school performance last Friday that the teacher forgot to notify us about until like 11 o'clock the night before. And, you know, she kept asking me, Mom, are you coming to my performance? I was like, what performance?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Tomorrow. I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
You know, yes. I'm like, okay, do you really want me to be there? Yes, Mom, I really, I'll be there.
Yeah, of course.
I'll figure it out. And
of course.
And Fridays are the one day that I protect for personal reasons, like really well, because I need to have, for myself, I need a little bit of time to do things that are going to refill my cup. You know, that's what keeps me serving my clients the best. So I do have Friday mornings open for kind of anything that might come up like that.
Great. That's so wise. That's something that I preach to everyone. I do not practice what I preach. I'm horrible. I'm overscheduled 24/7. Yeah. But that's my goal for this year, is to get more towards a balanced schedule and carving out time for self-care and carving out time for exercise. And my goal for this year is to get a hobby. I don't have any hobbies. So do you have any hobbies?
My hobby is my business.
Okay. But that's not a hobby.
It's not.
That's your livelihood. So I need a hobby. Maybe we could start a hobby together.
I mean, I love hiking.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's one of those hobbies in San Diego you can't really do by yourself, right? And so I try to do that as much as I can. But yeah, that's kind of my only thing right now. I've just spent probably every waking minute of the last year and 3 months growing my business. Because it's so rewarding.
That's great. Well, and I'm not saying you have to have a hobby, because if you have your passion for what you do and you have time to fill your cup and that does fill your cup, then yes, absolutely, go all in. For me personally, I'm like, I need something else.
Yeah.
So
I know.
Yeah.
I gotta figure something else out.
Yeah.
Too.
All right. So I know that you're a member of the Vista Chamber, and you're also a member of the Carlsbad Chamber. So tell me about chambers. Like, what made you join the chamber? Do you like it? What are you getting out of it? I'm curious.
I love it. And actually, I love the Vista Chamber. So, you know, when I first started my business, you know, sort of the primary way that it was to get clients was through QuickBooks Pro Advisor.
Okay.
And I thought that's kind of slow. I'm just kind of like sitting around
What is that?
waiting.
What does that mean?
So QuickBooks Pro Advisor, when you become a QuickBooks accountant, you have access to some certifications that you can take. And once you get certified, you get like a profile.
Okay. So it gives you leads.
So yeah.
Okay.
And so you show up on a directory of accountants.
Sure.
And, you know, I got quite a few initial leads, but it didn't give me like the connections that I wanted. I really, you know, being new to San Diego still, even at that point, I had only been here less than 2 years. I still hadn't built as many connections as I wanted to. And I love the relationship aspect of my work. That's probably one of my favorite parts, is building relationships with my clients. And so my husband is in a workout group called Ep4, and one of his buddies is part of the chamber as well, and had mentioned to him, like, hey, every time I go to the Vista Chamber, like, there's always somebody looking for a bookkeeper. Tell your wife she needs to join the Vista Chamber. And so it was the first chamber I joined, but then I thought, why stop there? I joined the Carlsbad Chamber as well, because I liked how the events were staggered.
Sure.
And I remember coming to the first event, which was the Member Appreciation Valentine's Day event, and I was blown away. Like, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know how big it was going to be. I was really nervous, but like, you guys just made me feel so welcome right away. And like, everybody was so nice. And I was like, this is great. Like, I think after that, I started coming like monthly, and then, you know, joined a lot more events after that. And I just loved like coming and connecting with other business owners who, were like-minded, and it just helped me build so many initial relationships that, I'm never going to stop coming.
Yay! Well, good. We're glad we hooked you in. But, I think that's important that you mention the relationship piece, because especially when you're dealing with your money and your finances, a lot, and I find this as the CEO of the chamber, oftentimes people are sharing with me really personal things that, money is really personal. And it especially as a small business owner, oftentimes you're not an S Corp yet. It's part of your home finances are intermingled with that. And so it can be really, really personal. And so when people are working on their books, they need to trust the person that's doing that, not just trust them that they're doing it right, but trust them with confidential information. Yeah. Sometimes they're sharing with you personal stuff. Sometimes it's like maybe they're going through a divorce, or they have an ill parent that they're caring for, and there's some commingling of things, and you have to sort that out. And so I think it's really important, the relationship piece, one for any business. And I of course, I think that everyone should join their local chamber or more than one, because every chamber has a little different flavor. Yeah. But especially when it comes to trusting someone with your finances and with your accounting, it's more than that, because how you spend your money and where your money lands is really, especially here in our country, it's really a reflection of like your core values in a lot of ways. And so there has to be trust there. That's
totally right. And, I always tell, my prospective clients, like, look, there's no judgment here, just solutions, right? Like, I've seen it all. I've done, I think, 15 cleanups now, and I've seen it all from like no bookkeeping to, commingling between 8 separate entities. Yeah. Yeah. So I've seen it all, and I don't judge. I just want to help, right? So the relationship, having that solid relationship is a really important aspect of that.
Yeah, that's great. Are you, so you're taking new clients?
I am. However, I have a little bit of a waiting list right now.
Okay. Well, right now, as we're recording this, we're coming up on tax time, just a few weeks away. I think the episode will come out after the tax break. So at that point, would you maybe have a little bit more capacity?
Yeah, probably. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And as my employee started about a month ago. Okay. So she's still training, but I anticipate that in the next couple months, we're going to have a lot more capacity.
That's great. It's a great place to be. You're really at that pivot point where you like to help people through that transition. You're at that place. I know. Where you're growing. So that has to feel so personally rewarding.
It really does. It really does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you had to give any business out there who's listening, they don't have a bookkeeper, they're worried, do you have a piece of advice that you could give them that would put them at ease, or like any tip or any suggestion that you want to share?
I want to tell them not to feel ashamed. I think this same situation happens to probably 90 or 95% of small business owners. And so don't feel ashamed about any financial situation or any bookkeeping situation you might be in, but do talk to somebody qualified who, truly cares about your business. We have packages at all different support levels. And so even if you think you can't afford it, you can't afford not to, because ignored books are costing you money.
Yeah, that's a great point. Ignored books are costing you money. So you probably have the money for it if you were categorizing things correctly or moving things around. And even if, oftentimes businesses, when you're first starting out, you're not revenue positive, right? You might be operating at a loss. So there's again, like you said, don't be ashamed about, maybe no bookkeeping or mistakes, or even if you're not in a financially prosperous situation yet, you will be, but you have to get your books in order to get you there.
That's true. And I can help even more with that, because I'm also helping my clients implement Profit First, because as we all know, we all start businesses.
What does Profit First mean?
Profit First is a book, but it's a way to run your business intuitively. A lot of business owners, just people in general, the way that they manage their finances is by looking at their bank account, right? So, I have $10,000 in my bank account. I'm good. I can go buy that $1,000 piece of equipment, or I can go out to eat or whatever. But realistically, you have to do the math in your head. You have to decide, I need $1,000 for payroll and I need, $2,000 to pay my bills, and Profit First is a system that makes that a lot easier. So basically you open 5 core bank accounts, one for operating, one for payroll, one for income, one to save for taxes, and one to save for profit. And it's called Profit First because we don't want profit to be the afterthought or the, am I going to be profitable? No, you decide if you are profitable, and you need to pay yourself from the beginning because that's why you started a business. It's not just a job. It's your life, right? Like you started a business so that the business can pay you to work.
To build wealth.
Yeah. Right. And so Profit First, it's a great system to implement from the beginning or from as early as possible because it allows you to save for profit. It allows you to start paying yourself. And you don't have to be an S Corp to pay yourself, right? You can pay yourself through owner's draws. But you need to make sure you're doing that or you will lose steam in your business really quickly. And so I'm starting to help my clients implement that and they love it. And I've been using it myself now for, 4 months or so. And I love it as well. And so it's a great read and it's actually my book recommendation.
Okay.
But it's a must for any business owner who's starting out.
That's great. That's a great tip. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to share before we jump into the rapid fire?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad you've been here with us and you've shared a lot of really great insights. And before we wrap up, I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions. So you already sort of gave us a little spoiler for the first one, but the book that you recommend, tell me a book that you recommend.
The book I recommend is called Profit First by Mike Makowitz.
Okay. I'm very intrigued by this. So maybe we need to do a book group and have everyone read it and do a book group about that.
That would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Okay. All right. Tell me a song that you love. What's your jam?
My jam right now is Can't Stop by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep. It gets me pumped up every time I listen to it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Good. That's a good one. Okay. And then tell me what inspires you.
What inspires me is seeing other business owners be able to thrive, knowing that they have peace of mind with their finances.
That's great. Love it. And last one, tell me a Vista business that deserves a shout out.
I have to shout out to Love Your Feral Felines. A few months ago, I saw a post on their Facebook page about a cat that had been in their care for nearly her whole life. Aww. So almost 2 full years. And I felt very called to adopt her. So we made the application. We set up cuddle time. You can go there and cuddle with all the kitties and play with them. And I loved how they really made sure that we were the right home and that was going to be a good fit for her. But at the end of the day, they put the crate on the floor and she climbed right in and we took her home.
And what's her name?
Her name's Cricket.
Cricket!
And now she is my office assistant.
Oh, little Cricket. Okay, what color kitty is she?
She's a brown tabby.
Oh, who doesn't love a little tabby?
I know.
She's little Cricket.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm so happy. Yeah. Happy for your family. That's great.
You.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, RaeAnn. I really appreciate you sharing your story and these tips with everyone. And we'll definitely include your website and information in the show notes. Everyone check those out.
Great. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you to my guest, RaeAnn from Stout Bookkeeping. And thank you for listening to Velocity. If you like what you heard, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and tell a friend. Help us move Vista forward with velocity. The Vista Chamber of Commerce is a nonprofit organization that serves as a catalyst for business growth. Find us online at vistachamber.org.